It would be unfair to claim that Liverpool are in crisis just because of a last-minute defeat away to Chelsea. Jumping to conclusions now would only be following the crowd. But when a team begins to suffer a string of losses, things get more serious. Something deeper must be wrong, something that's pushing the reigning champions into this rough patch. And right at the center of it stands their biggest star, Mohamed Salah, who's enduring his worst spell since setting foot at Anfield. Arne Slot's new-look Liverpool is, in many ways, a gamble. His personnel choices and tactical tweaks still lack a solid foundation for success, and the cracks are beginning to show across the pitch. One of the most pressing issues lies with Salah himself. Salah holds a special place at Anfield, and rightly so. His contribution to the club's success over the years has been immense, earning him both admiration and affection from the fans. But football can be brutally unsentimental. No matter how great a player is, if he can't sustain his peak, the game moves on without mercy. It might be unfair to pin Liverpool's attacking struggles entirely on Salah's dip in form, yet it's clear that Slot hasn't quite figured out how to get the best out of him in this system. For any player in their 30s, maintaining top performance and fitness becomes a battle against time. Physical decline is inevitable. Speed, agility, and sharpness naturally fade. For wingers who rely heavily on pace and explosiveness, that decline feels even sharper. To stay relevant, they must adapt, reshaping their game to compensate for what their legs no longer offer. Cristiano Ronaldo is the perfect example. Once a blistering winger, he evolved first into an inverted wide forward and later into a pure striker as his body changed. He can no longer outpace defenders, but he still scores through intelligence, positioning, and instinct. That evolution extended his prime long after his sprinting days ended. Salah now finds himself at a similar crossroads. Since around March, coinciding with Ramadan, his form has shown signs of inconsistency, and that patchiness has lingered. He still scores, still produces flashes of brilliance, but the explosiveness that once defined him seems to be fading. Whether he likes it or not, adaptation is no longer optional. At first, it seemed like there was an unspoken agreement between Mohamed Salah and Arne Slot when the Dutchman arrived at Anfield. Free me from defensive duties, let me focus on attacking. I'll deliver the goals, and we'll win. That was the idea, more or less. Since the Egyptian forward no longer had the stamina to sprint, press, and attack for 90 minutes straight, streamlining his role made perfect sense. The outcome of that understanding was a version of the 4-2-4 system designed to give Salah attacking freedom. In that setup, he was relieved of most defensive responsibilities, allowed to conserve energy for moments that mattered. Dominik Szoboszlai became the engine, tirelessly shuttling between lines, covering for Salah's lack of pressing. Up front, the central striker and Luis Diaz on the opposite flank spearheaded the high press, harassing defenders and forcing errors. Salah's role was more cerebral: hold the right position, draw defenders out, and open space for teammates to burst forward. Then, with a quick off-ball run, he'd slip behind the back line, ready to finish or combine in a dangerous pocket. It was a role built on intelligence rather than intensity. Fewer sprints, fewer duels, more control of his own energy levels. But that dynamic hasn't survived into this season. The first problem is fitness. As mentioned, since around March, Salah hasn't looked physically sharp. Some games he seems drained, others he looks awkward. Heavy touches, slower bursts, even his trademark curlers lack their usual precision. His body simply isn't responding the way it once did. Then came the structural changes. With several high-profile summer signings, Liverpool's attack now looks very different. The 4-2-4 has evolved into a 4-2-3-1, which shifts into a 3-2-3-2 shape when attacking. Fullbacks pushing high, and Florian Wirtz, the new number 10, pulling strings in the middle. The problem? Wirtz is a creator, not a relentless presser. That alone breaks the chain of intensity Slot demands. And that means Salah's free role is no longer sustainable. To maintain the team's pressing rhythm, he'll need to rejoin the collective effort, to chase, to harry, to defend from the front. If he doesn't, then the only alternative is for Liverpool's new signings to hit near perfection immediately. Arne Slot's tactical overhaul still hasn't bridged the gap between theory and reality. Florian Wirtz, the supposed centerpiece of the new system, is struggling to adapt, not because of a lack of talent, but because the Premier League is a different beast entirely, faster, rougher, and far more physical than what he faced in Germany. Slot's plan to strengthen control in midfield, easing the need for constant pressing up front, simply hasn't materialized, and reverting to the old setup isn't an easy fix either, not when so much of the attacking unit has been reshaped. It's not just Wirtz. Hugo Ekitike and Alexander Isak are also fighting their own battles, adjusting to the team's tempo, building chemistry, and sustaining intensity for a full 90 minutes. To be fair, Slot showed his tactical adaptability last season, skillfully tweaking his system to fit both his players and his opponents. So why hasn't that flexibility worked this time? Has he suddenly forgotten his own strengths? Of course not. Last season's adjustments were built upon a solid foundation, the well-drilled 4-2-4 system with clear principles and structure. His tweaks worked because they were layered on top of something stable. But this year, we're witnessing a rebuild from the ground up, a new formation, new tactical principles, and new players. The foundation itself is shifting. That's why Slot's famed flexibility now looks more like improvisation, short-term, unstable, and reactive rather than proactive. It's like constructing a house. If the foundation is solid, you can build any style you want, modern, classic, minimalist, and it will stand firm. But if the base is shaky, even the most luxurious mansion will eventually crack. For Salah, this instability has become a silent burden. He's no longer playing to his strengths, his form has dipped, and the frustration is starting to show. The psychological weight of underperformance, combined with constant tactical reshuffles, is clearly taking its toll. Slot's response to this chaos was visible in the recent clash with Chelsea. He reverted to the old framework, benching Wirtz, bringing Szoboszlai back into midfield, and replacing Frimpong with Bradley to restore balance. Yet, even then, the old system couldn't fully function. When Chelsea pushed forward, Isak was forced to split the opposing centre-backs on his own, while Szoboszlai had to track Moises Caicedo just to prevent Liverpool's midfield from being overrun in a 3-versus-2 battle. Liverpool's pressing on the right side is breaking down, and Mohamed Salah is at the heart of it. His defensive pressure is no longer what it used to be, which gives opponents an easy outlet. Against Chelsea, Marc Cucurella repeatedly became that release valve, picking up the ball and driving it forward. It's not that Salah doesn't understand his role, he does, but he simply no longer has the engine to close those channels consistently. Once Salah was left behind, Cucurella had space to advance, link up with Alejandro Garnacho, or later Jamie Gittins, and target Liverpool's right flank, where Connor Bradley, and later Szoboszlai, was left exposed. When the rest of the Liverpool side stepped up to press while leaving that side open, half of the team suddenly found itself scrambling to recover, chasing shadows. From those moments, Chelsea had options everywhere, releasing their winger into space or exploiting the half-space run, just as Cucurella did for the decisive 2-1 goal. From Salah's point of view, his positioning made sense. Staying higher up allowed him to be a counter-attacking threat, especially since Cucurella's forward surges left that flank unguarded. In theory, it was the perfect setup: win the ball, release Salah, and strike back. But that plan only works when Salah is at his sharpest. This version of him, the one struggling to dribble past defenders, the one whose trademark curlers now sail into the stands, can't deliver that punishment anymore. And yet, Salah's status at Liverpool is too monumental for him to simply be benched. Even if Slot wanted to, who replaces him? Federico Chiesa has been reduced to a late-game impact option, and while Jeremy Frimpong has been tested higher up the pitch, his instincts lean toward driving crosses into the box rather than cutting inside to score like Salah once did so effortlessly. That leaves Liverpool stuck in a tactical limbo, unable to fully move on, yet unable to fully depend on their fading superstar. The ripple effect is immense, forcing the club to question its entire structure. At the center of this conundrum stands not just Arne Slot, but also sporting director Richard Hughes, the the architect behind Liverpool's summer rebuild. This is their Liverpool now. The Klopp era, with all its emotional chaos and high-octane gegenpressing, is over. The club finds itself at a tactical crossroads. Should Slot adapt his system to maximize what remains of Salah's brilliance? Or should he take the risk of phasing him out to build something entirely new? A team molded in his own image? Whichever path they choose will define not just Salah's future, but Liverpool's identity in the post-Klopp era. The success of this season, maybe even the next few years, depends on how quickly and decisively they make that choice.